What is going on, guys? Welcome back to Wildcat Cave. With news slowing down in the basketball world, I thought it might be a good time to focus on some SEC football. The season's coming up quickly and things are changing. Texas and Oklahoma joined the conference this year, which means a schedule shakeup is coming, and Kentucky's lost some opponents that we're used to seeing in lieu of new matchups and as a result of some recent success. Today we're going to look at Kentucky's schedule and I'll give my way too early predictions for the season. Once again, if you're not already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that by clicking the subscribe button down below. It's right there, so you might as well just click it. Also, while you're at it, leave a comment and let me know what type of videos you want to see this summer while there isn't much happening around UK. And finally, after the video, head over to X and follow me there as well at WildcatKBBN. Now on to the video. Kentucky football has came a long way since Mark Stoops and company took over the program. From going 2-10 and losing to Vandy by 40 to multiple 10-win seasons and bowl appearances becoming normal and expected. But Stoops has become a victim of his own success. With greater results come greater expectations. And with this possibly being his most talented group he's ever had, expectations are at an all-time high. And even with the talent he has this year, this is a massive season for Mark Stoops in my opinion. Let's not forget that Kentucky stole a win at Louisville last year to avoid a 6-6 season, and shortly after the Texas A&M rumors began. There was a portion of fans who were not thrilled about the season as a whole, and when the rumors of Stoops leaving began, they were ready to let Stoops go. I have been pretty vocal in my opinion on this, but I'll do a recap really quickly for you guys. I do not agree with the fans who are happy at 6-6 because Kentucky used to be really bad. I think that's a bad mindset to have, and if you've proven that you can sustain success, which Stoops has done, then you should be held to that standard. I'm not saying that Kentucky needs to contend for titles every year, but we also shouldn't be 2-6 against SEC teams at home in the past 2 years. Stoops has brought more success to UK than anybody has, but there's a habit of dropping games and being arrogant without really winning anything. So by no means would I put Stoops on the hot seat, or even close for that matter. But for a large portion of the fans, I think some of their opinions on Stoops will depend on what they expect this year versus the actual outcome. The problem is, the SEC just became much harder with the addition of Texas and Oklahoma and the changes in the schedule. So let's get into the schedule. In my opinion, you have 4 toss-up games with Ole Miss, Florida, Auburn, and Louisville that will determine the entire season. But we'll talk about those guys in a minute. So we'll just go in order, 1 through 12. The first game is at home against Southern Miss. I don't see a world where this should be competitive. Southern Miss is a D1 AA school. They're an FBS school. We should have no problem taking care of Southern Miss. In my opinion, that's an easy win, and then you look forward to week 2 against South Carolina. Now, you get South Carolina at home, but let's not forget, this is the team that's beaten you the past 2 years. They won when we had Will Levis, and he was hurt and he didn't play, and they kind of stole one from you at home. But last year, you went to South Carolina and you laid an egg in a game that you should have won, but left Columbia with a loss. If Kentucky wants to be as good and have the season that they think they should have this year, then they need to win this game. This game normally comes a little later in the year. Kentucky normally plays one of their first 4 games against an SEC team, and it's usually at home. But this year you get 2, and one of them's Georgia and 1 South Carolina. Both are at home, and you have to get South Carolina because I don't think you can count Georgia as a win right off the bat. South Carolina, they've lost Spencer Rattler, but by all means, Shane Beamer has turned that program into a formidable foe for Kentucky. After winning like 7 of 8, Kentucky has recently dropped the ball against this team who they should be better than. So if Kentucky wants to have a good year and they're as good and as talented as we all think they are, South Carolina could be a huge pivot point in the season. Now, I think South Carolina comes in. I think Kentucky, with the talent they have and Brock Vandagriff and the receivers coming back and the running backs they brought in and some of the defensive pieces they have with Deion Walker, I think Kentucky should take care of these guys. But South Carolina's no slouch, and this is not a team they can afford to overlook, because if you drop this game that early in the year, it could derail your whole season. But for the time being, I'll give Kentucky the win against South Carolina. And then that brings you into week 3 against Georgia. You're 2-0. You get probably the best team in the country at home. You hope for a win, honestly, but let's be honest, it's Georgia. No one's going to be upset if you go lose against Georgia. I don't think we should lose by 50, but I also don't think we're going to win. So as long as you keep Georgia semi-competitive, I think most fans are okay with a loss here. After Georgia, you have Ohio University coming to town to round out your first 4 home games. Ohio University, again, much like Southern Miss, a small school, one you should have no problems getting the win over. And then you travel at Ole Miss for your first real road test of the season. If you remember 2 years ago, we went to Ole Miss, had the game won, Will Levis was hurt. We threw a game-winning touchdown, and they called a false start penalty on us when Dane Key caught the touchdown. So that should have been a win 2 years ago. I think this team is a little more talented overall than that team. I don't think Brock is Will, so we lack in certain areas. I think this is going to be a really close game. Everyone that just counts this as a loss is probably wrong, but I don't know that it's a guaranteed win either. In my opinion, I guess they got rid of the SEC East and West now with Texas and Oklahoma coming. But if you were comparing Old West and Old East teams against each other, I think Ole Miss and Kentucky are really comparable. Because it's at Ole Miss, this, along with a few other games, I think are toss-ups and really define the season. Ole Miss has Jackson Dart coming back. They're probably going to be ranked in the top 15. Looking for that, now that we're at a 12-team playoff, Ole Miss, like Kentucky, is going to be fighting for that 10, 11, and 12 spot in the playoff. It's hard for me to pick us to go win at Ole Miss when they have a team that good and a quarterback that good. I'm going to give us the loss against Ole Miss for now, but this is one of those toss-up games. And then you have Vanderbilt, who comes to Lexington. Again, it's Vanderbilt. They're not, Ohio or Southern Miss, but they're not far off of it. We should be able to take care of Vanderbilt at home. I know we've said that in the past, and we've taken it for granted, and it hadn't really panned out for us. But me personally, I'm going to count Vanderbilt as a win. So far, just by my count, that puts us at 4-2 on the season. And then we travel to Florida. Now, Florida, they're obviously getting a lot better. They've played us closer and closer. Now, we've had their number in the past, 3 years now? 4 out of 5 or something like that. So, we do own Florida. Florida does not like playing Kentucky anymore. It's became a good rivalry for us. But they're getting better. It's in the swamp. We have the streak going in. I think we have the talent to compete. It all just depends on which team's gelling correctly. Again, like Ole Miss. I think all these toss-up games, we kind of end up splitting with these teams. It's just a matter of guessing the right split. I think we beat Florida because of the streak, and I think we're just talented, and I think they're still not quite to where Florida should be yet. But because of that, I will take the win in the swamp against Florida to put us at 5-2. And then we have Auburn coming to Lexington. This is a team that admittedly has been really down in the recent years. Not very good, not contending, but every now and then they sneak up and put one on you, and you're just not ready for it. I think if you are 5-2 at this point in the season, most people are feeling pretty good about the team. And then you have Tennessee next week, and that screams trap game. We see this every year under Mark Stoops, and until Stoops proves that his teams won't do this, I have to think that they fall victim to a game at home against the team that they're better than, but they just let it get away. So I'm going to take Auburn as a loss right now, and that's not good because we roll right into Tennessee the next week. Going to Tennessee, you guys have heard me say this on the channel 100 times, as much as I want to beat Tennessee and I hate Tennessee, until we prove that we can beat them, I can't pick against them. I don't think Tennessee's gonna be really good next year. I think last year was their once a decade type of season, so I don't even think Tennessee's gonna be outstanding. I think they're gonna be fine. I mean, they're probably looking at an 8-4 season or something, and they're definitely beatable. But until Stoops proves he can win that game consistently, I just don't have faith in it. So I'm going to put Tennessee down for another loss. Now this is where the schedule changes a little bit. Normally we get our three bad teams that we play every year. We get them they're front loaded in our schedule. It's like 3 of our first 4 games. But this year we get Murray State after Tennessee, which could be a good reset point for us. This is what like Alabama and a lot of those teams do, like right before rivalry weekend, they'll have a team like this where they just kind of go tune up. But Kentucky hasn't had that recently. So I think having Murray State here is a really good thing. Like I said, if we win at Florida and then drop Auburn and then you're on a streak of losing against Tennessee, after you lose to your rival and then you go into your final 2 games, which are admittedly hard games, you need a good tune-up game. So this is where Murray State comes in. Obviously, I think we take care of business there. And then you're going into the final 2 games to see if you can make, your season special. And then you go to Texas. This is obviously their first time in the SEC. They're going to be preseason ranked top 5. Texas is going to be no slouch, obviously. Everybody knows that. They've been back for years now, but last year they kind of solidified themselves by making the college playoffs, and now they join the SEC to see what it's really all about. So Kentucky has to travel to Austin, which is obviously no easy task. I think there's just a NIL gap. There's going to be a talent gap. Maybe they go down there and steal it and we all celebrate. I just don't think so. I think Kentucky loses to Texas. And then you have Louisville at home. Again, the last game of the season, going to be one of those toss-up style games. Louisville has consistently gotten really good under Jeff Brom last year, and they went 10-2, obviously lost to Kentucky, but if we're being honest, Kentucky stole that win and did not deserve it. Now, if this were in Louisville, I probably wouldn't pick this as a win. As bad as that is to say, it would be really bad for me to come on here on a Kentucky-based channel and say we're going to lose to Tennessee and Louisville. But I'm not going to do that. Because it's at Kroger Field, because we've won like 5 or 6 straight against Louisville, I'm going to pick us to win, but we have to watch out. These games, like I said, those 4 to 5 games we have, they could go either way. South Carolina, Louisville, Auburn, Florida. All of those games, if the ball bounces the wrong way, then that could be a really bad season for Kentucky. But if it bounces the right way, it has a chance to be really good. Now, if that's how the season plays out, Kentucky finishes with a record of 7-5. And I got to be honest, as I was going through these games, like I just said, I struggled to pick out the wins and the losses. While Kentucky football is as good as they've ever been, it seems like they end up a game or 2 short from where most fans predict at the beginning of each season. They also tend to drop a game when they should win it. I'll also acknowledge that the difference between 5-7 and 9-3 is razor thin. There is no margin for error in these games. In my opinion, the 2 most important games on the schedule are South Carolina and Auburn. If you can find a way to win both of those, and of course take care of the other games that you should take care of, then you're looking at what I think most fans would say is a successful season. The scenario I laid out is my personal standard for calling this year successful. If you go 6-6 or worse, I think it was a failed year by all accounts. 7-5 might not get me dancing in the streets, but I also wouldn't be heartbroken with this schedule. And if you can manage 8-4 with this schedule, I think that's a really good season. Now, if you go 9-3 and you have an outside chance at the college playoffs, that would be in the running for one of Mark Stoops' best seasons ever. I know Stoops has went 9-3 before, but I think playing Ole Miss, Tennessee, Florida, and Texas on the road makes this schedule very difficult, and that's not even counting South Carolina, Georgia, Auburn, and Louisville at home. That isn't exactly a cakewalk of a schedule. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you know that I normally predict like 8-4 and 9-3 type of seasons. But with the recent letdowns and honestly how hard the SEC has become, I think 7-5 is the most likely result. And Vegas, by the way, has Kentucky's overall win set at 6.5. For better or worse, I think this is a statement year for Mark Stoops in Kentucky. People have heard how Kentucky is a dark horse in the SEC for 3 or 4 years now, and it mostly hasn't happened. But the Cats have brought in the talent they need to compete with these other schools, and now they just have to go do it. Thank you all for watching this video. Go subscribe to the channel right now and follow me on X at WildcatKBBN. Let me know in the comments, what are your opinions of Mark Stoops? What are your predictions for the season? And what will you consider success? I'll see you guys in the next video. Go Cats.